Yes, sir. Come on up.
Michael Yoder from the Lancaster Patriot. I had a question about the decision last week by the Office of Open Records regarding Mike Miller's request to look at the mail-in ballots. I received a letter that Jackie sent to Mike with 7 points, different requirements regarding the rules or the process of inspecting the ballots. Some of those include no photography, no videotaping of the process, no groups, that it has to be one person, things like that. I was wondering where those points came from, if that was a county policy, if it's a state policy, if those were just developed now because it hasn't been done before, things along those lines. I was just curious.
Sure, and I can answer that question. So the county is tasked and is required to ensure the integrity of ballots. And it's important to remember that the ballots that are being requested to be viewed are the actual physical original ballots that people filled out. They are not copies and they are not digital images. And so in the past, when we have election, if you look at the election law, which governs access to election materials, in the provision that the general provision regarding election materials, it specifically indicates that there should be inspection with a staff member present. And so that element was lifted from actual election code. We also had things like there's no writing implements. And again, that is to ensure the integrity of the ballots. We don't want there to be accidental marks placed on there or anything along those lines in case there should be a need to provide an audit or account of ballots. If there's litigation, we can't have any type of external marks made on those. So I'm sure you can understand those types of parameters. Additionally, under the right to know request and under election code, the individual who is requesting needs to be a qualified elector in the county in which they're requesting stuff. And so you can't just have like a group of individuals and they're not the actual requester. The requester is the individual who's made the actual request, which in this particular instance, I believe that you mentioned is Mr. Miller. Additionally, those parameters which we put in place have been used in the past. Anytime we are using those type of election or there's an inspection of election materials, there have been a number of requests for materials, not just in this election, but going back a couple of years now, really picking up in 2020. So those parameters were put into place then. We did put in light of the fact that we are 30 days out from an election, we did give the option because Krista's staff is obviously very busy right now. This is their crunch time, especially it being a general election. We do have the option sometimes to use the sheriff's deputy or another designee, so another county employee who knows the parameters to stand watch in their stead, just so then that way we can ensure the integrity of the ballots. So that's the parameters. And again, that's been used in the past.
It's my understanding in the election code that copies of the ballots are permitted if time is allowed.
So no, there again, you're looking at a couple of different provisions of the election code, and this is actually what prompted, I think, some of our questions about how it is you're supposed to treat the mail-in ballots. And it specifically says in some sections that it's just supposed to be available for inspection for some materials. Some materials you can provide. There are lists of things that we can provide copies to. There are, but again, it just depends. And in this particular situation, having copies of ballots, we believe is not permitted. Now, if there is a court that at some point will say that we can or should be copying ballots, then we will certainly do that. But that's our interpretation at this point.
Is that unsettled law right now, or?
Well,
Again,
again, with I don't believe it's unsettled. I don't believe that there's any provision in election code that specifically says that we should be making copies of ballots and handing those out. It's just an inspection thing.
I can't imagine what people might think if there's these ballots floating around. What the integrity,
Absolutely.
my
Well,
gosh.
and not only that, but just thinking of when you have sample ballots, people sometimes have sample ballots at election. There's law regarding the colors, what they can look like. And so to make copies, that there would be all kinds of complications associated with that.
Okay. Do you know the actual election laws dealing with the review of the mail-in ballots? Do you happen to know?
I don't have them in front of me. There's three sections that deal with public access to election records. So there's the provision under the absentee ballots, and that language was lifted with regards to the section to the mail-in ballots. And then there's the general provision, and it's 626 something, and I don't have the number in my head, which deals with public access to, contents of a ballot box and those types of things. That's the primary section.
Okay.
But I mean, if you have certain.
But there's
sections that
also
you'd like
other
us-
laws, and I mean, that's the issue.
Correct.
We're just trying to follow the law, and like, this is the issue with the right to know case. There's a constitutional
Mhm.
right to privacy, specifically with regard to signatures. And so you have conflicting law. So again, we need black and white rules. And we're just trying to follow the law and run a secure election.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from anyone else?